Hello everyone. This session deals with the Keynesian consumption function and the absolute income hypothesis. So before going into the theory, let us first discuss what consumption is. Consumption may be defined as the process of deriving utility from the use of goods and services. We know what utility is. Utility is the one satisfying power of a commodity or a service, and the process through which you derive the utility from a good or a service can be defined as consumption. So what is consumption function? It refers to the whole schedule which shows consumption at various levels of income. So this can be represented by C as a function of Y, where C is your dependent variable, Y, which is your income, is the independent variable. So as your income changes, consumption also changes. There are mainly two important technical attributes of consumption function: the average propensity to consume, or the APC, and the marginal propensity to consume, which is the MPC. The average propensity to consume, or APC, shows the share of consumption in your total income. So it can be denoted by C by Y. And the marginal propensity to consume, or the MPC, denotes the change in consumption for a unit change in income. So in macroeconomics, there are several theories on consumption. For example, you have the Keynesian theory, which is known as the absolute income hypothesis. You have Milton Friedman's permanent income hypothesis, James's Duesenberry's relative income hypothesis, the life cycle hypothesis of Anto Modigliani and Bloomberg, Robert Hall's random walk hypothesis, Irving Fisher's intertemporal choice model, and so on. Among these theories, today we are going to discuss about the Keynesian theory, which is popularly known as the absolute income hypothesis. Keynes published his general theory, the general theory of employment, interest and money, in the year 1936. And according to his absolute income hypothesis, consumption is determined by the absolute level of the current disposable income. So this can be represented by C is equal to a function of YD, where C is consumption, YD is your disposable income, absolute level of the current disposable income. So what do you mean by disposable income? It is income at your disposal. That is income after paying your taxes. YD is equal to Y minus T. Income at your disposal for consumption. This can be expanded into this form, where C is equal to A plus BYD, where A is autonomous consumption, B is marginal propensity to consume, YD is your disposable income. So what is autonomous consumption? It is the level of consumption when your income is zero. So naturally a question comes to your mind. How can there be consumption when your income is zero? Here comes the role of your savings. You can make use of your savings for consumption when there is no income. And this process is known as dissavings. So dissavings allows you to have consumption when your income is zero. So A is autonomous consumption. B is your marginal propensity to consume, and according to Keynes, the marginal propensity to consume is always less than 1 but greater than 0. Why it is greater than 0? Because when income increases, consumption also increases. So the marginal propensity to consume is greater than 0. And why is it less than 1? Because when income increases, consumption also increases but in a lesser proportion. So the marginal propensity to consume is less than 1. Keynes considered only a short-run consumption function, and that too which is linear in nature. Linear in the sense the Keynesian consumption function is a straight line. And it is also based on the psychological law of consumption, which is nothing but where the marginal propensity to consume is greater than 0 and less than 1. Let us see the details of the psychological law of consumption. The law states that as income increases, consumption also increases but in a lesser proportion. So you have the MPC or B, which is greater than 0 but less than 1. Three propositions are implied in this. First one, when income increases, consumption also increases, but by a smaller proportion. That is, your increase in consumption is less than the increase in income. Second point, the entire increase in income is not spent on consumption, but a part of it is used for savings. So when your income increases, there is also an amount which is allocated for savings. And finally, the increase in income is likely to lead to increase in both consumption and savings. So when your income increases, both consumption and savings increase. There are some assumptions which Keynes has put into place when he has proposed the absolute income hypothesis, like the institutional and psychological complexes influencing consumption remain constant. This tells us that all subjective and objective factors other than the current disposable income are assumed to remain constant. And the law holds only under normal conditions. And he assumes a rich, capitalist and laissez-faire policy or a laissez-faire economy, that is a free trade economy. So this is the graphical representation of the Keynesian consumption function. On the x-axis you have the disposable income, on the y-axis you have consumption. OC is your 45-degree line which shows y is equal to consumption plus savings. CC is the Keynesian consumption function. AY1 is your consumption at OY1 level of income. BY2 is your consumption at OY2 level of income. Now, if you look closely, what is the average propensity to consume at point A? It is basically the slope of this ray, the ray starting from the origin to that particular point. That can be given by AY1 by OY1. So what is the average propensity at point B? BY2 by OY2. So it is evident that the average propensity to consume at point A is higher than the average propensity to consume at point B. So what does this imply? As income increases, the average propensity to consume falls, or there is a declining tendency for the average propensity to consume when income increases. And the marginal propensity to consume remains constant in the Keynesian theory. These are some of the features of the absolute income hypothesis. It is absolutely a short-run analysis and it shows a non-proportional relationship between income and consumption. Why non-proportional? Because we have seen that when income increases, consumption also increases but in a lesser proportion. And the marginal propensity to consume is always greater than 0 but less than 1. And we have seen that the autonomous consumption is greater than 0. Why? Because of dissavings. Even when income is 0, there can be consumption and that consumption is known as autonomous consumption. We have seen that the APC falls as income increases. The MPC remains constant as income increases and the consumption function is stable according to Keynes. These are some of the important features of the absolute income hypothesis. Now moving on to the implications associated with the absolute income hypothesis. The absolute income hypothesis invalidates Say's law. So what is Say's law? Say's law was propounded by J.B. Say, which states that supply creates its own demand. But we know that the Great Depression was itself a proof that whatever is produced need not be consumed. So supply need not create its own demand. Why? Because we know that the marginal propensity to consume is less than 1 and the average propensity to consume decreases when income increases. Second point is significance of investment. We have seen that as income increases, the average propensity to consume falls. So the share of consumption in total income is declining as income is increasing. So this gap needs to be filled by investment so that the economy doesn't face a shortage of effective demand. Investment multiplier. What is investment multiplier? It shows the multiplied effect on income when there is a change in investment. And this investment multiplier was proposed by John Maynard Keynes, and it's given by 1 by 1 minus MPC. So what does this show? Higher the value of marginal propensity to consume, higher will be the multiplier. Higher will be the investment multiplier. The absolute income hypothesis also explains the turning points of a business cycle. We know what is a business cycle. What are the turning points of a business cycle? The topmost point or the maxima is known as the peak, and the bottommost point is known as the trough. So the turning points are the movement from peak to trough and from trough to peak. So what causes the movement from peak to trough? MPC less than 1, APC falling as income increases. And the movement from trough to peak, though MPC is less than 1, we know that MPC is always greater than 0. So when income increases, there is consumption. And then investment multiplier kicks in, and then income increases, and then the movement happens from trough and the economy goes into the upward swing. Justification for progressive taxation. What is progressive taxation? It is taxing according to the level of income. So the rich will be taxed more and the poor will be taxed less. So what is the justification? The justification is the marginal propensity to consume for the poor is higher than that of the rich. That is, if you give an additional unit of money to a poor individual, there is a higher chance that the same will be used for consumption. So the poor should be left with more disposable income so that the level of consumption in the economy can be increased. And finally, importance of state intervention. In a three-sector economy, who all are the players? You have the households, you have the firms, and you have the government. So the total demand, Y is equal to C plus I plus G, where C is the consumption demand coming from the households, I is the investment demand coming from the firms, and G is the government spending. So situation is such that if C and I cannot be increased, the onus rests on the state to increase the public spending or the government expenditure so that there is no shortage of effective demand in the economy. So these are some of the important implications of the absolute income hypothesis. So in short, the absolute income hypothesis was proposed by John Maynard Keynes, and the hypothesis states that consumption is determined by the current level of the absolute level of the current disposable income. That's all for now. Thank you.